The Galactic Colonial Commission had designated Kepler 442c as Hostile Class 7 after the third failed settlement attempt. The reports were always the same. Colonists would establish their prefabricated habitats, begin resource extraction, and within weeks, they would go silent. Recovery teams would find nothing but scattered debris and strange claw marks scoring the metal walls. Dr. Elena Vasquez read those reports with professional interest as her single-person research pod descended through the planet's atmosphere. The brass had finally given up on colonization, but they still wanted answers. What was killing everyone? How could they avoid similar worlds in the future? As the Commission's leading xenobiologist, Elena had volunteered for what everyone assumed was a suicide mission. The planet's surface was a nightmare of twisted black trees and crimson undergrowth. The air was thick with spores that her suit's filters worked overtime to process. As Elena set up her temporary lab in a clearing, motion sensors immediately began registering movement in the forest around her. Whatever lived here was curious about its new visitor. The first attack came at nightfall. Something the size of a small transport vehicle crashed through the tree line, moving on 6 powerful legs that ended in razor-sharp talons. Its elongated skull housed rows of serrated teeth, and bioluminescent patches along its spine pulsed with predatory intent. Elena barely managed to activate her defense field before the creature's claws raked across the energy barrier. Instead of running, Elena watched. The creature, she mentally dubbed it a Ravager, circled her position with calculated intelligence. It tested different angles of attack, probing for weaknesses. When the defense field held, it retreated into the darkness, but Elena could hear it calling to others. Deep, resonant howls echoed across the forest. By dawn, she counted at least 12 distinct Ravagers maintaining a perimeter around her camp. Any other species would have packed up and fled. Elena unpacked her camping gear. Fascinating, she murmured into her recorder. Pack hunting behavior with clear tactical coordination. Previous colonists would have interpreted this as pure aggression, but there's definitely intelligence here. Over the following days, Elena established a routine that would have horrified her colleagues. Each morning, she would venture outside her defense perimeter to collect samples. The Ravagers would stalk her, sometimes coming within arm's reach, but they never attacked during daylight. She began to recognize individuals. The Alpha had a distinctive scar across its left eye, while another had unusual silver markings on its claws. The breakthrough came during her second week. Elena was examining a fascinating symbiotic fungus when she noticed movement in her peripheral vision. A young Ravager, barely half the size of the adults, had wandered too close to her camp. One of the planet's other predators, a massive aerial hunter with transparent wings, dove toward the juvenile. Without thinking, Elena activated her emergency flare gun and fired directly at the flying predator. The creature shrieked and veered away, its wing membranes singed. The young Ravager looked at Elena with what she could only interpret as curiosity before bounding back to the tree line. That night, the pack's behavior changed. Instead of testing her defenses, they arranged themselves in a protective circle around her camp. When another aerial predator approached, the Ravagers drove it off with coordinated strikes. Elena began leaving food outside her perimeter, protein rations that the Ravagers initially ignored. But gradually she noticed the offerings disappearing. She started varying the placement, creating patterns, leaving some portions closer to her camp each day. The Ravagers adapted their patrol routes accordingly. 3 weeks into her mission, Elena made a decision that violated every Colonial Commission protocol. She deactivated her defense field. The Alpha Ravager approached slowly, its massive form moving with surprising grace. Elena held perfectly still as the creature extended its neck, scenting her carefully. Its breath was warm against her face, carrying the metallic smell of the planet's unique biochemistry. For a moment that stretched into eternity, predator and human regarded each other. Then the Ravager stepped back and vocalized, not the hunting howl Elena had heard before, but something softer, more complex. The rest of the pack emerged from the tree line, surrounding Elena in a loose circle. She felt no fear, only wonder. Over the following months, Elena learned to read the Ravagers' body language, to distinguish their different calls, to recognize the subtle social hierarchies within the pack. She discovered that they weren't mindless killers, but sophisticated hunters with rich emotional lives. The previous colonists had triggered their territorial instincts by establishing permanent structures and depleting local resources. Elena adapted differently. She moved her camp regularly, following game trails the Ravagers showed her. She learned which plants were safe to harvest and which areas were sacred to the pack. When she finally established a permanent research station, she built it according to Ravager territorial markers, creating a space that belonged to both species. The Colonial Commission's rescue ship arrived 6 months later, expecting to find Elena's remains. Instead, they found her thriving in a camp protected by creatures that had killed 3 previous settlements. She had filled terabytes of research data and made contact with the planet's apex predators. "How?" asked Captain Morrison as Elena loaded her research onto the ship. Elena glanced back at the tree line where glowing eyes watched their departure. The Alpha Ravager stepped into the clearing, its scarred face tilted toward the sky. It vocalized once, a farewell that Elena had learned to recognize. "I didn't try to conquer their world," she said. "I asked if I could share it." The rescue team wanted to evacuate her immediately, but Elena refused. She had found something more valuable than any colonial resource, proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, but their ability to see intelligence and worth in the most unlikely places. The planet remained classified as Hostile Class 7 in official records. But Elena's research station became the foundation for the first successful human-alien cooperative settlement, where 2 species learned that home wasn't about dominance, it was about belonging.